This is AndyTube. In this video I'm going to show you how to fix these selector knobs when they're frozen, like the ones on this machine when they won't turn. So you can call it unfreezing, unsticking, releasing, you know, whatever you care to do. Now normally, you know, when I restore a machine, I'm just going to take it all apart, so I wouldn't really care if they're stuck. But I know most people are not going to do that. So what we're going to do is lubricate up there. I'm going to show you where to lubricate, how I do it, to free things up and get them moving again. And you can use just regular sewing machine oil. You don't have to get fancy for this. I'm going to go ahead and use my Tri-Flow because I have this little tube and I can be more precise about placing it. You can also use, you know, a penetrating spray if you like WD-40 or any of the several others. And I have also often used a crud cutter, my cleaner and degreaser, and I'll pour some into a little dropper bottle and then just put a few drops of it, you know, into just the right places that are most effective. But keeping in mind, if you're not going to dismantle the machine and clean it and so forth, that whatever you put in there, I would suggest you get back out. You don't want to leave a lot of puddles of oil or cleaner or anything like that. Plus, down below the cam stack here, at the bottom of the cam stack, those pattern discs, or we call them cams, sit on a pattern selector that has a disc driving worm wheel. And there's a big gear that mates with the worm gear like that. That's a shaft from a similar machine. This is the worm gear, and this center part in the cam stack is a cam stack, by the way, what we call a cam stack. These are all the little pattern discs of steel that are built on, and this is the disc driving worm wheel, and it mates up with the worm gear, right? And that should have grease. You don't want oil on there. You don't want oil on gears like these. So be judicious with your oil or your spray, because you should clean it out of there. So that being said, I'm just going to use oil because I'm not going to dismantle this machine yet. And we're going to put a few drops in the right places and see if we can get things moving again. Okay? So first let's look at these knobs a little bit. Singer calls them selector because you use them to select the different patterns on the cam stack. And the beige one or cocoa colored one in the front, you push in and turn, and it moves this selector arm. That's just an indicator arm, okay? And then the back knob you pull towards you, and then that's how you do the setting over here on the right side. And again, these are just indicators. This whole setup is, you know, a couple screws and these indicator arms and a spring and stuff. It's not any big deal, but it's a big deal to me because, you know, when I pull this out and I try and turn, it's locked up. When I push this one in and try and move it down or up, it's locked up. So what's supposed to happen, you know, is that these indicator knobs or dials, they're on like a shaft here that runs through lifting mechanisms and is anchored in the back here. Okay. And what it controls, what's really happening when you are pushing those knobs and turning them, is that these lifter mechanisms, you see one here, the shaft is going right through it, and it's connected over here, and you'll see like a hinge screw that's on a lifter and a follower. So let me grab a similar follower here. Okay, they look like this, and they're sitting on anchored post. Here's the rear one back here, and here's the front one right here. And they're supposed to, you see they have a hole in it, of course, so when you turn the knob, or pull it in this case, let me do that while you see it. You'll see the things trying to move. And when this is supposed to pull and turn, and then the lifter's going to take the follower down. That lifter will drag the follower down that post, and here's the actual follower tip right here. See that? This side of the follower tip follows along the pattern disc that you set it to. See how these are, they have high spots and low spots, and that's what makes the pattern. So when it's turning, this follower tip is set right at the right height, so it's following that in and out pattern as the cam stack turns, and that's what's supposed to make your pattern. Okay, now the back side, you see how the back side is the same as the front, looks the same. The back side of the follower rests against a paddle on the needle bar driving arm. This is what's pushing on the vibrating bracket in the nose, this little paddle, and that's making the needle bar swing left and right. So when this turns, it's supposed to be, this follower would be on the plastic special disc that I couldn't get on here because it's broken. But when the disc pushes on this side of the follower, see how it's going to push that driving arm and create the pattern with the needle bar. Okay, so that's what's supposed to be happening. And then I showed you the front rear lifter is back here, and there's a rear follower like so. See, it sits like this. Right, sits like this. And this one follows along at the rear of the cam stack. So it gets lifted up that stationary post to whatever you set it to, what pattern, and it's swinging the needle bar to make that pattern. So when you select double on here, you know, like I don't know, CF or CP, there's a pattern for that on the chart, and you've got this following a cam in the back, and you have this one following a cam in the front, and they kind of take turns they're timed by the engineers and the design. They take turns pushing that needle bar driving arm and swinging the needle, and you get a combination pattern. Voila. Okay, so I got to raise up my camera here and show you how we're going to get some oil in here in the right places to free everything up. Okay, that looks like a good view to me. So remember I said that this shaft is connected to the back of these dials or knobs, and they run right through a supporting brace, and they run through the front lifter, and then they run through the back lifter, and then they're in like a bushing back here to support the other end. So when you're pushing or pulling a knob, it's supposed to move freely through all of that, and mine is not. Okay? And then when you push or pull, let's do this front one here. You see how it's supposed to get to it like a release point, so then it can turn up and down. And these, it's not doing that. It's not getting to the release. So I'm going to be oiling onto this shaft just at the points where it's going in and out of the brace and the lifters and into that back bushing. They get all crudded up, and when the machine's not in use for a while, the oil that may be in there gets dried and what I call varnished, and it gets sticky and hard even. And the same thing can happen with these followers. The lifter's trying to slide the follower up the post, but they're just like glued together sometimes. And this is supposed to be a nice shiny stainless steel post, and you see it's all dirty, dark brown. That's from dried up oil and gunk. So I'm also going to want to put some drops onto that post to try and get oil, or I would use a cleaner, between the follower tube and the post where it slides up and down. Now you don't need to, spray this whole thing like crazy. Those are the trouble points. So I'm just going to put some oil there where I mentioned, and I guess I'll start at the back here and get some oil. Maybe I'll tilt it back a little, get oil in that bushing. On each side of this is like a supporting brace. It passes through. There's probably a little bushing in there. I'll get it on this side and squeeze it right in here behind the back of the knobs. Okay, and then I'm going to go over around the lifters and get some oil on those posts. Okay, and you can put oil right on the post. It'll run down in there. I just go around the side near the lifter and hope that it seeps down in there. Now normally I would tilt the machine away from me and put oil on the other side of all the parts that it goes through. It's hard to do that when I'm filming. So if you like, some people, you can just let it sit there and hope that that soaks in and starts softening the whatever's making it stuck in there. If you have a little bit of movement, you can slowly start moving stuff and trying to work the oil into the areas. Okay, but the primary areas that you want the oil are this back bushing, right here behind this ivory colored plastic between this lifter, the silver lifter, and this brace, right around the brace and right in there. Because look, you see when you push this front knob, it's going to push that shaft back. See? And when you pull the ivory knob, it's going to pull it forward. Right on, okay? And then the last place that you may want to consider, if I can get this back here. Watch what happens. I'm going to push on this beige knob in the front, but watch back here. Can you see how that wants to pop out? That's how you adjust, kind of like play on that shaft. And look how junky brown and everything is around there. So you can push that. If you can get that out at all, push it as far as you can. In my case, it's about a 32nd of an inch. But put a couple drops of oil on the back side there, because that's the back side of the bushing, right? Let it soak in a little bit. Alright, now get this propped up a little bit again. Okay, here is what I do. I have a lot of patience when I work on the machines, but not for this. So if doing this doesn't free everything up in a couple of minutes, I just get my old hairdryer, okay, and I put it on a low speed and just warm. You don't really need hot usually. And I know some people have told me they've used a heat gun, like for stripping wallpaper or paint. I don't have one of those, but they sound really hot. But if you can control the temperature on them, that would be okay. The idea is just to heat this oil up. Okay, you're getting the idea. I did that for a couple of minutes, right? And then while you're doing it, you can start pushing on this, but you just don't want to force everything. Using the hair dryer, it softens up the old, it thins out your new oil a little bit, helps it get into the places. And you can gently push or pull these. Just don't force anything. You don't want a follower to bend. I've seen bent followers. The lifters are pretty heavy, but I've seen bent followers. So, just kind of pull on this gently while you're using the heat, and you can push on the front one while you're using the heat. Now see, look, I'm already starting to get more movement on that, pushing it back. Let me put this hair dryer down. See if I can tilt this again without dropping it. There's my back adjusting screw at the back of the bushing, and look how far it comes out now. Wow, you see that? Before it was just about there. It would just barely pop back. It's still sticky. It's still, when I'm pushing on it, it's still like hesitating, but it's already able to go all the way back to the limit. Okay? And there's an adjustment on that limit, but we don't need to get into that. So the other thing now would be, can we pull this forward to the other limit? There. Yeah, it's hesitating. You can tell there's gunk in there, and it's still kind of sludgy, I guess, and sticky. But look, I can pull this all the way out now. Okay, so that's my first step, is to get full movement of the shaft. This pulling back on the shaft, and this pushing the shaft towards the back. The next thing I want to try now is turning the dial to see if these risers can move the lifters up and down. So this is the one that's all the way up, because it would normally be riding on the plastic special disc. That's why I couldn't get the disc on, because this follower was sticking in there and wouldn't let the disc seat. I got that with me? No. So anyway, let's see now if we can pull this. We can pull this all the way forward now. See? And now let's turn it. Oh, there we go. Just gently, just start wiggling it. Here it goes. Pretty sludgy. I'm not turning real hard, but I have to turn a lot firmer than you normally would. And wherever I turn it to, it kind of jumps, stick, 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 like that. But it's freed up. Look at that. That's what we want. And the more I run it up and down now, the more it's kind of mixing the new oil into the old and getting loose. Let me put it all the way down, and I'm just going to take an oil rag here, and I'm just going to wipe off that post. Not too bad. It's still pretty dry on there. Now you know why I take these things apart. But let's just put a couple of small drops of fresh oil and run it now. A little bit easier. Yeah, this sure needs a good cleaning, huh? You know, a lot of times in the owner's manual, or owner's manual, sorry, the instruction manual, it'll tell you oil, and people just oil and oil and oil and oil. They never clean out the old. Let's see what's at the top of this now. Yeah. See, in this one, I can see the whole post is just covered in old dried varnished oil. But let's try that one now. So I got the front one. I'm going to move the lifter and follower all the way down. Okay. See how the back of that follower goes along this paddle of the needle bar driving arm? Yeah. Okay. So let's look at this back one now. On this one, I push in, and I'm going to turn it left to try and get it. It's kind of stuck between A and B. So I'm going to yeah. Where's that follower? The follower rides kind of down in here. It's hard to see, but I can see it's kind of between two discs. It's between the lowest disc and the next one up, because it can't really turn all the way. But I think it will now. So let's push it in, right? Because we can push it in, and let's try and bring this up. Okay, there it comes. There we go. And again, it's sticky and hesitant, but it's turning. So I'm going to bring it all the way up and put some oil up in there, because there's a little recessed area now. And then I'm going to try and take it down and drag the oil with it. There we go. Much better. Much better. Okay, so there's how to get them unfrozen or unstuck or whatever you want to call it. You don't need a ton of oil and a ton of spray. Oil the critical spots, and if you're like me and you have a hairdryer, you know, run some hot air on there for 2 or 3 minutes, and just once it starts to move a little, you'll be surprised that that allows more air to get in there. I mean, more oil to sneak in. Maybe you can see this, the lifter here is got an arm that's recessed into, where's my, man, this will be better to show it. See this slot right here on this follower? See that little slot? Well, there's a part on the lifter on the end of this hinge screw that comes up and comes back, and it's got a piece that slides right in there. In the post, there's little notches just at the perfect height for each pattern. So when you're pulling this, you're pulling the shaft, but you're pulling that little thing out halfway to get off the notch of the post. See, right now you're locked in, but if I pull it out a little bit, now it'll turn. See, and then when I get it where I want to kind of wiggle it and let that finger go back into the groove all the way and lock into a post. So the whole problem with this was I couldn't move this dial on the shaft, and I couldn't move the shaft back here to get those little locking fingers out of the post and let me turn. It would only come out a little bit and it was stuck. Now I can pull it out all the way, I mean the knob, and unlock from the grooves cut in the post and go wherever I want. So before, when it was up here on special, I couldn't get a plastic disc. So when you put on or take off a plastic disc, this right indicator must be off of special. And that's why, because special puts it in play. So if I just move it down just even one to below the top, let me find my disc. Okay, here's my disc. So with this off of special, I just moved it down 1 to R, but off of special, now I can put my disc right on there. See? Because this follower tip is lower than this and back a little bit. When it, let me pull it off, when it was stuck up in special, that brought the follower tip to a point where it interfered, and that's why I couldn't get this to go on. It's blocking. Okay. But I wanted to take out and show you how to clean the cam stack and put it back, but I realized when you do that, you have to time the cam stack, and you have to be able to have movement here to time the cam stack. And I said, oh, okay. So that's what this video was for. Just freeing stuff up and getting it back into position. And if you want to clean it with a cleaner or alcohol as best as you can, alcohol in a brush, soften it up, wipe up, toothbrush, whatever. If you don't want to take the whole machine apart the way I do, or wash it in the bathtub, the shower. Thanks for tuning in on this. I hope that was helpful. to you and informative, and I'm asking you to come back because the next video we're going to take that cam stack out, and you're going to be surprised at how easy it is. We're going to take that cam stack out, we're going to take it apart, I'll show you a couple different ways to clean it. We're going to put it back together in the proper order, and then we're going to time it. It has to be, you know, it has to be timed to the pattern and the needle bar driving arm. So, you don't want to miss that. Thanks for watching. Please take care of yourselves. See you next time.